Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm Cheryl Roller, President of the League of Women Voters of Metro Columbus. Welcome to the 32nd Annual Democracy in Action event, where we're all going to have a good time honoring Reverend John Edgar. And Angela has assured me we're going to have a great time tonight. We're honoring Reverend Edgar for his lifetime of service to the people of Central Ohio, and in particular, his service to the people on the south side of Columbus. But first, before we get to the fun part, I want to take a moment to make a few comments about the League of Women Voters. It's always worth remembering that the League of Women Voters is always nonpartisan, and it's our ongoing mission to empower voters and safeguard our democracy. You understand that. That's why you're here tonight. And because it's one of our most important duties to safeguard our democracy, I'd like to make a brief statement on the student protests happening across this country and around the world. At the League of Women Voters, our goal is to ensure that every person can make their voice heard in the streets and at the polls. We firmly believe that, like voting, peaceful protest is a constitutional right deeply rooted in American democracy. Both voting and protest are powerful tools for driving change. Therefore, the League of Women Voters of Metro Columbus stands in solidarity with all the people everywhere who are exercising their legitimate civil rights to engage in peaceful protest to end wars and bring peace and justice to all. So, please join us in this important work. Join the League and become an active volunteer with the League. Help us register voters. Help us collect signatures to get the Citizens Not Politicians redistricting amendment on the ballot in November. And thank you, because I know several of you brought petitions to sign. And in fact, if you haven't signed yet, we have a volunteer in the red shirt in the back holding up the petition to sign. Volunteer at a voter registration event. In the next 30 days, we have more than 20 voter outreach events scheduled, and we need your help. So, also, please stay up to date with the work of the League by reading your weekly e-voter newsletter. And that's where you'll find opportunities to volunteer at voter registration events, at petition signing events, and other general voter engagement events. Now, thank you to everyone for attending tonight. Sorry, I'm getting feedback there. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors for supporting the League of Women Voters and making our Democracy in Action event possible. Thank you to Crane Group, Honda, Nationwide Children's Hospital, the Robert Weiler Company, and Worthington Companies Foundation. Let's give them all a big round of applause. And there are also several individuals in the audience I'd like to recognize. I'm pleased to recognize Democracy in Action honorees from past years who are here tonight. Would Democracy in Action winners from past years please stand up, or at least wave, because I know there are 6 and Fran was our winner last year. Thank you. And remember, all you shy honorees from previous years, come up here for a photo afterwards. We also have many of our volunteer leadership team at the League of Women Voters here tonight. If you are a current board member, please stand up and be recognized. If you are a past League of Women Voters of Metro Columbus president, please stand up and be recognized. And of course, I'd like to recognize the incomparable Elizabeth Grieser, Operations Manager. I'd like to welcome the amazing Angela Page.
Well, thank you for having me. Anyway, back to the important work that the League of Women Voters does. They register voters, you all know that. They hold candidates' nights, great candidates' nights, and they answer voters' questions, not just at election time, they do this year-round. And right now, as Cheryl told you, they are working on a new ballot issue to finally end gerrymandering in the state of Ohio. So, oh, she's waving her little petition back there in the back. Okay, we see you. You can stop now. Thank you. Just starved for attention, aren't you? Yeah. So remember that she's back there and make sure that you sign the petition. Now, they make information available year-round on their website, on social media, and on the YouTube. And they'd be happy to provide you with whatever information you need to make sure that our elections are fair and honest. They made a special focus in 2024 on helping voters to navigate Ohio's new voting laws. And I think we all need a little help with that. The League also works with, this is my favorite part, they work with young people, y'all. They're working with our babies. They're trying to make them responsible voters when they are old enough to vote. Collaborating with Girl Scouts right now to help them earn their citizenship badges, and partnering with dozens of high schools to engage students in voting and advocating for the issues that they care about. Tonight is all about celebrating the fact that people can make a difference in their communities. The Democracy in Action Award is the League's highest honor. It is given annually to a person or an organization that has demonstrated outstanding participation in civic affairs and service to the community. Recipients embody a strong belief that our democratic system of government works best when citizens are active and informed. I'll say that again for the folks in the back of the room. Active and informed. And they demonstrate a long-term commitment to and a zeal for increasing the level of political activism and knowledge within the community. So Cheryl has already thanked our sponsors, Crane Group, Honda, Nationwide Children's Hospital, the Robert Weiler Company, and the Worthington Companies Foundation. Let's give them another round of applause. And now, to the person that we are here tonight to honor, Reverend John Edgar, who's been working to improve life here in Columbus, especially on the South Side, for more than 4 decades. For those of you who are trying to do the arithmetic in your heads, that's more than 40 years. I Googled it, I looked it up, I'm pretty sure I'm right. The United Methodist Church for All People provides free clothing and household items to those who need them, and food to hundreds of families every day. John is dedicated to community development that utilizes and builds on the positive attributes of the neighborhood and its residents rather than the deficiencies and the problems that may exist. And I think that's important that he looks at the glass half full. Supported by a strong partnership with Nationwide Children's Hospital and multiple diverse partners, John has cultivated people's basic dreams, desires, and unique gifts into creating affordable housing, a fresh produce market, health services, and community and civic involvement. And he believes that democracy begins when each person's gifts are affirmed, all are touched by God's grace, and people learn to trust and support one another. I'm going to say that one again. People learn to trust and support one another.
Amen.
Hey, that's what I want. I got amen. Thank you. Reverend Edgar's book, A Front Porch for All People, I love that title, tells the story of building a radically inclusive urban community. And of course, guess what? There are copies of the book in the back because he's pushing his book, and I don't blame him for doing that. He's retired. He needs the extra income. So there are copies of the book in the back. Make sure that you do purchase one on your way out. So John's colleagues and friends, Dr. Lisa Cordes, CEO of United Way of Central Ohio, and one of my favorite people on the planet, and Dr. Kelly Kelleher with the Center for Child Health Equity and Outcomes Research at Nationwide Children's Hospital. Y'all got to do something to shorten up that name. I don't ever want to have to say that name again. Find something cute and short, because folks in TV like cute and short. Thank you, Dr. Kelleher. They are both here to honor Reverend Edgar as his honorary co-chairs. So first, please welcome Dr. Lisa Cordes.
You are also, like me, probably finding new relationships with people you knew before COVID. I haven't seen Angela in person since before COVID.
But we've been emailing.
We've been emailing. We've been making things happen in our city. So just a quick note before I honor my friend, John Edgar, I will share with you that this is very meaningful to me because I have a lifelong affinity and passion and commitment to the Methodist Church. And my husband, who his work brought us here to Columbus, he was president of Ohio Wesleyan University. And his grandparents went to Ohio Wesleyan University and they graduated in 1903 and 1904. Do you love that? And a woman graduating from college in 1904, which was amazing. And they went to college with Branch Rickey, who, right? He made Jackie Robinson a star and started to integrate baseball. And I always say that my mother-in-law probably hooked up with him at a fraternity party. She probably would not like that if I saw her. Before coming to Ohio, we served West Virginia Wesleyan College. Whoop. Whoop. We have a whoop. All right, good. So we're, diehard Methodists. So just coincidentally, that's not the reason that I'm here to celebrate John tonight, but coincidentally, we do have a passion for that. And my husband's grandfather, I don't know what that makes him to me, I never knew him, found himself in a parsonage on Lake Chautauqua in New York. They're from Pittsburgh originally, and so he had a church in Jamestown, and they thought they might build a home, like they didn't have a home of their own, so they built a home in 1910 that we're still in. How cool is that, right? It's so cool, and we just love the tradition of the Methodist Church and all that it has meant for us. So it's an added bonus to me. So thank you to the League of Women Voters of Metropolitan Columbus for its history empowering voters and defending democracy. Congratulations to Reverend John Edgar for being selected by the League of Women Voters for its 2024 Democracy in Action Award. Reverend Edgar certainly embodies the values of the League of Women Voters, and I am pleased to be a part of tonight's recognition of his commitment to the residents of the South Side and for his transformational advocacy for affordable housing and inclusive living. For much of my professional career, I've had the privilege of advising philanthropists and other funders who are seeking to invest in innovative solutions to improve community. And it is in this capacity that I met John 20 years ago. This year or next year, John and I might celebrate our 20th, I'm not sure what year it is, friendiversary. I remember our first meeting. 20 years later, as I remember it, we met in a small building on Parsons Avenue, and everything seemed small, but we sat at a small table with a light bulb hanging over it. But I think I'm making that up, but it felt like that, right? Whether or not this is true, that's what it felt like. What I most recall is that John presented to us a vision for urban ministry, and he was in startup mode. Over the following 2 decades, his vision in all things became a reality. The church for all people, the all people's fresh market, bikes for all people, IDs for all people, healthcare for all people, healthy meals for all people, kindergarten readiness for all children, worship for all people, clothes for all people, to name just a few that served all people. Reverend Edgar reminds us to listen and respond to the hopes and dreams of all people, and to be reassured that we live in a divine economy of abundance. This minister is also an astute business leader. Did you already know that? His all people movement has leveraged $125 million for the development of 449 affordable housing units on the south side. He is a forerunner. We've been saying for decades, we have a dearth of affordable housing, and now we have Intel moving into our economy, and we need to plan for 750,000 people that will join our region in the next 30 years. It's a task ahead of us. Reverend Edgar teaches us how to draw on partnerships, resources, and gifts that are already in our community. And he has demonstrated how leadership, partnerships, and philanthropy create meaningful community impact. Thank you. Congratulations, John Edgar.
And now, Dr. Kelly Kelleher with Nationwide Children's Hospital, and that long title that I talked about, and an honorary co-chair will honor Reverend Edgar.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you especially for not repeating. Yeah. But no, especially thank you to the League of Women Voters. I was explaining to some of the staff on the way up here that I had the fortune to work the polls this most recent election, and when people bring in League of Women Voter materials, or you talk about the League of Women Voters, everybody is so proud of this organization, and so I really want to commend you for the work you do. It's amazing. You know, the Democracy in Action Award is the highest honor, and it speaks to raising the voices of all people. And Reverend Edgar is all about raising the voices of people. And before I get into that and say about it, I just want to express a little bit of sadness for he and Sue Wolf, his wife and wise counsel of many years. They just added a beautiful little sunroom on the back of their lovely home in Marion Village. but it's filling up quickly with all the awards Reverend Edgar. So you might have to add more soon. But in all seriousness, this concept of elevating the voice of all people is foreign in our current society, right? It's not something we talk about, all people, because we all have divisions, we all have our tribes, and the whole concept of all people in all the ways that Lisa mentioned, that the Church for All People has engaged the community in the South Side has been amazing. And I had the pleasure for the past 2 decades of walking alongside some of those activities as part of Nationwide Children's. And the achievements are many, but you can't even begin to talk about all of them because you don't even know the little ones. The meetings that he canceled because he was driving people to the polls. The number of voter registration forms we had to carry around with us when we're going places to get people to sign up. The tent meetings about Black Lives Matter, or the open table conversations in the church. You know, move aside all the chairs right after worship so we can have an open table conversation. And packed rooms of all kinds of people from every walk of life. Even more so was the after hours stuff. We got a call from the Bexley Women's Club who said we have 20 boxes of diapers to donate to the diaper bank. And so he shows up at my house and we're loading up his car and opening up the church after hours, opening up the church after hours for clothes donations from wherever, filling up the trunks. You know, we're supposed to meet to go over a business plan for new housing, and here we are stuffing men's suits in the back of his trunk. So it is a full life committed to this. But it's really not about those achievements, and you could read more about them in the book, and I would strongly encourage you to read it. I wrote the foreword, so I'm feeling great. But the point is not so much what he achieved, because those will be forgotten after a short time. But it's actually how he achieved it. And I think that's what we miss out so often when we talk about these awards, because there's a long list, and thank goodness Lisa went through it, and it's in your program, and it's in the book. But John taught me as a student, you know, about the 5 A's of working in the community. And I hadn't appreciated all of them, but first he saw when people started learning about asset-based community development, he said, it's not just the empty buildings for factories to bring in new businesses, it's not the empty lots to build a new bike path through Linden, or it's not just the empty houses to do affordable housing. The asset is the people. The asset is the people. We have to remember it's always the people first. He said that we live in an economy of abundance, and Lisa quoted that in this whole concept that there's more than enough for all of us if we open our hearts and minds to innovation and to loving each other. And that idea that there's an abundance in our society, we never found a shortfall. I mean, sometimes it took years to emerge, but there was always a solution if we were open enough and loving enough to find it. Authority of individuals. Each person had an authority about their own life. He would talk to the mayor, and we would leave and go to the soup kitchen, and he would talk to the people in line for food. And every person had insight into their life that could inform the mission. And he allowed everyone to have a voice and to be heard about that. He also said it was about accompaniment. We weren't walking in front of people telling them what to do. We weren't walking behind people. We were walking with people. And so the concept that I know Church for All People continues to embrace, and CD4AP does as well, is that we walk with people in accompaniment and give them choice. And lastly was awe. That every person that you meet with awe because they're a child of God. And when you know that about every single person you meet, then you react differently to how you listen to them. Even if they disagree with you, you don't get upset, you learn from it. And so John approached every activity with this sense of these A's, this abundance, this awe, this inspiration. And what does that do to the community? It not only gets them to vote, it not only gets them to raise their voice at a meeting, it actually makes them sing in their life. And we come together in community in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. So congratulations, John. This is an amazing award and well deserved.
I invite our honoree, Reverend John Edgar, to the stage.
League of Women Voters Metropolitan Columbus celebrates 32 years of democracy in action by honoring Reverend John Edgar for his lifelong commitment to the residents of the South Side of Columbus and his advocacy for affordable and inclusive housing. For over 40 years, John has led the United Methodist Church and the entire community in addressing issues related to fair utility rates, affordable housing, and medical care. Whether in a parish or an administrative position, John's dedication to justice, diversity, and poverty has made a difference in people's lives. In 2003, Reverend John Edgar was the founding pastor of the United Methodist Church for All People, one of the most diverse United Methodist congregations in the United States. The Church for All People focuses on community work in the South Side of Columbus through community development for all people. Led by John's passion, these organizations have fostered monumental, sustainable change for the entire community, including a free store which provides free clothing and household items to 20,000 persons per year, and a fresh market that serves more than 350 families every day. Supported by strong, local, and diverse partnerships, John and the Church and Community Development for All People were able to build $125 million worth of affordable housing in the Southside neighborhood. In 2022, John received an award from the City of Columbus for his lifetime service to the community. His greatest joy is knowing that the Church for All People has provided 1,200 units of safe, affordable housing. In retirement, John is dedicated to ensuring that truly affordable housing remains available for all people. John has published a wonderful book, A Front Porch for All People, about building a diverse and inclusive urban community here in Columbus. Congratulations to Reverend John Edgar on exemplifying democracy in action.
I'm going home. Good night, everybody. So, as a South High Bulldog from way, you have to do that. I'm sorry, it's in the blood. But I do remember what the South Side was like, Reverend Edgar, back in those days, and it was a thriving, bustling neighborhood, especially Parsons Avenue. Lots of shops, lots of businesses, small and medium-sized businesses. And they were all very, very supportive, not just of each other, but of their high school, Columbus South High School. I remember I was in the marching band. Yes, I'm a band geek. I was in the marching band, and we would have to put on our band uniforms, and the cheerleaders put on their cheerleading uniforms, and we would go up and down the streets and solicit donations so that we could buy new instruments and new marching bands. And the great thing was, it was a neighborhood. And everybody said yes, or if they couldn't right then, they'd say, hey, I'm going to buy a ticket to the next football game, or I'm going to contribute something to the next sock hop. There are those of you who have no idea what a sock hop is. That's okay. Ask your grandmother, she'll tell you. But such Bulldog and Southside pride at that time, and then it changed, as things do change, and now it's changing again for the better, thanks largely to your efforts. So I thank you for that. As a former South Sider, I thank you for that. But my question, why focus on the South Side?
I became fascinated with the South Side actually way back in the 1980s, but I had the opportunity around 1997, 98, in a role I was doing as the district superintendent supervising 78 United Methodist churches in Central Ohio. I had a chance to look at the South Side and think about both what its legacy had been, what you're talking about, and some very unique characteristics about it, even as we were heading in to 2000. And in particular, the South Side was and still remains very diverse, even though at the time that we were starting the Free Store and Church for All People, it had fallen on hard times. There had been, quite frankly, decades of disinvestment and the consequences of redlining. But what we were still seeing is, if you looked at the South Side in its entirety, it was a rich mix of black and white folks, young and old, gay and straight, and folks of various economic levels. And so I was intrigued with what it would look like to be part of living in this neighborhood, trying to bring it back in a way that would create unity in the midst of that diversity. So that's why we started there. Mm-hmm.
And so your church has been basically the cornerstone of everything that's going on in the church and in your nonprofit organization.
Right.
The United Methodist Church for All People. What's the origin of that name?
Yeah. We launched this church out of a direct service ministry called the Free Store. And the Free Store is just what the name suggests. We had people from all across these different United Methodist churches. And we'll try it. Yeah, I appreciate it. And so we had people donating clothing and household items and coming to volunteer, and we were meeting hundreds, in fact thousands of folks in this community who were coming to shop in a store where everything was free. And out of that we began to build relationships of mutuality, and we decided to birth a church out of the folks who were shopping and coming to volunteer, and just people in the neighborhood. And so we had a small group of people talking about what it is we wanted to do with the church, and this notion that we wanted to create a worshiping community where everyone was welcome and affirmed. And so it was in the midst of dreaming about that one evening with a group of 15 or so folks, we got to talk about, well, what are the things that we believe? And they all ended up being statements that began with the phrase, all people aspire or yearn. And so we decided, why not name the church after those core values? And it became the Church for All People.
It doesn't get any simpler or more appropriate than that. That's a great name, great name. But the church and its companion nonprofit run the Free Store that you're talking about, and a food pantry, but you didn't stop there. You got very interested in inclusive and affordable housing. When did that start?
Yeah, as soon as we had gotten underway, we were talking with folks around this notion of asset-based transformation in the community. In other words, what are the strengths that are here, what do we have to work with, and viewing the people in the neighborhood as the primary asset. So that meant we were simply asking people, well, what are your hopes and dreams? What do you want to see happen next in your life? And what people kept talking about was affordable housing. And I still remember an early meeting with my wife, Sue, as we were talking about this. And Sue was saying, we got to get people to talk about something else because we don't know anything about housing. And we really didn't. I mean, we had no experience whatsoever. And yet, that's what people kept saying. Well, if you want to make a difference here, and people would talk about it in different ways. Some people were saying, hey, that I'm absolutely homeless, and the only address I have is the address of the Free Store, which people would use for various purposes. Other people would say, I've got this terrible landlord, and I pay my rent, but the plumbing doesn't work, and the appliances in the kitchen have been not working for a long time. And then we had people who were also just dreaming about what it meant to have a roof over your head and a key to your own front door. And so we decided to get started. And the way we began was we were talking about this image that we had all these vacant blighted houses on the south side at that time, but somebody had lived there once, the kind of families you were talking about. And so it made sense that somebody could live there again. We also had all kinds of people that were out of work, many of whom had worked in construction before, and then obviously we had a number of people that were homeless and couch surfing who wanted a better place. So we found one individual who owned a vacant, blighted duplex on the south side, and he agreed to turn it over to us. He gave us the money to buy all the materials to fix it up, told us we could hire anybody from the neighborhood, and we went to work. But we did it asset-based. This is the resources we had, we'll use what we got. But it was also true that we were learning as we were going. For example, we did not have a licensed contractor. So we skipped some steps like really, and we just went to work. And it caught up with us. I mean, the city truly shut us down when we didn't have permits.
You got shut down.
We did. In fact, I hadn't planned to
That is
share
so gangster.
In fact, I think it may be in the book, but very briefly, I got a call from the guy we had put in charge who ran a handyman business just out of his van, and he was, our supervisor. I said, the city inspector is here, in his back, maybe.
Just notify the name, it's all good.
Okay, you think that? All righty, thank you. And so I rushed over to try to reason with the city inspector, and I really did try this. I explained on the front porch the separation of church and state. I mean, I really did. I explained the state did things in the city like permits, and it was good, but we were just a church, and we were just trying to do good. And I did get a reward for my effort. They put this big red sticker on the front door that said we were shut down. We were shut down for 2 months until I found a kind United Methodist contractor who signed the permits, and we finally got done. But out of that, that's where we started, but as has been said, 15, 16 years later, we, with amazing partnerships, including the United Way of Central Ohio, Nationwide Children's Hospital, we have developed $125 million in affordable housing.
That deserves And as glad as I am that you've done that, I'm surprised you ain't in jail.
Well,
You should be locked up somewhere.
there are some who would agree.
Well, over the years, you have gotten some help from some pretty powerful Southsiders.
Yes.
Local developer Don Kelly, who was a South Side boy, grew up on the South Side. And one of my other favorite people on the planet, Jim Grody,
Yep.
who is Mr. Pizza, I call him Pizza Boy, the founder of Donato's, and his very first Donato's was on the South Side, not far from South High School.
Still open.
There after football games and all that, begged for pizza because we were poor. You have been described as the city's most unlikely power broker. Largely because of your associations and the fact that you just went gangster on the city inspectors. How do you feel about that?
I have attempted to be catalytic. I don't see myself as a power player. What I do believe, though, is that every one of us have gifts to offer, and when we come together and work collectively, it's amazing what can be done. And some of the assets of the South Side are these guys that you just mentioned and some of their friends. These are people who were first generation wealth. In other words, they grew up in working class homes, on the South Side. Don Kelly's dad ran a bar. His wife, Nancy Kelly's, is part of the Planks family, and which started out as a bar and has grown into other things. And Jim Grody, bought his first pizza shop when he was 19. I mean, these were just working class kids, but wanted to give forward. And so they've done amazing things, and it's been some of their energy that has inspired others. In fact, I still view Don Kelly, I'm 71, Don is 95, it was his birthday a week or so ago, but he's still a primary mentor in my life. These are folks who understand what it means to give forward in gratitude for what you've received. And it's helped bring the South Side, not just back, but to bring it forward in the richness for a new generation. Yeah.
I love the fact that both these guys have stayed invested in the South Side.
Right.
They both have.
Yeah.
Diversity and equity have been a big part of your program and everything that you've done to help not just the South Side, but the city of Columbus. So how do you think that your work with diversity and equity, especially on the South Side, has impacted diversity and equity in the city of Columbus?
Well, I'd like to believe that the work that we have been doing is a kind of a light that shines and encourages others to try the same thing. I mean, for us, from the very beginning, as I said, I was intrigued with the South Side because of its diversity, and I believed back then, and still do today, that you and I have the possibility to create mutuality that bridges differences in our community. And that's so much of what we have attempted to do, is bring people together in ways that promote unity and allow us to show that the things that we have in common are actually far more important than the things that separate us. But we have to work at it. We have to be willing to get together and build relationships of mutuality. And so one of the things that we talk about, and one of the reasons we did a number of these social enterprises, we run a coffee shop, an art gallery, a bike shop, but a lot of that is about this concept that I actually learned from Don Kelly in his life, called third place. So this is my one little educational thing. The notion is this, it's part of 21st century sociology. The first place in our lives is where we live. The second place is where we work, or if you're a student, where you go to school. But third places, that's where we hang out when we're not at home and we're not at work. And where we hang out, those third places determine the quality of the community in which we live. Because see, when people gather in third places, and I'm almost done my sociology lesson, they generate what's called social capital. In other words, we build relationships, we get to know people. But there are two kinds of social capital. There's bonding social capital, which is when all the Irish folks show up at the same Irish bar, and it's okay because you get to know each other, when all the wealthy people go to the country club. But bridging social capital is what happens when people come together in third places and meet people who are different but have positive experiences. And when that happens, we can transform the quality of life. And so, I'm not going to go from preaching to meddling, but I would invite you to think about when you're hanging out in your favorite third place, whatever it is, does everybody look just like you? Or to what degree do you choose to be in places where you are building relationships with people who are different so that we ultimately create unity in the midst of diversity? And I'd like to believe that that's what we're doing on the South Side and modeling for the rest of Central Ohio.
So we have heard about all your accomplishments, 1 million this, 100,000 that, and it's a very, very, very impressive list. I don't want to make light of it because it's incredibly impressive. What's your proudest accomplishment?
The thing that I am most pleased about is our ability through these various activities to begin to create a community that is truly inclusive. And so part of it's housing, and we emphasize that, but think about it this way, that housing matters so much on the South Side because we can't keep a diverse, inclusive community if we can't ensure that there are housing opportunities for people all across the economic spectrum. When I first got started, the issue was disinvestment. I mean, there was so much vacant and blighted that was boarded up. But the United Way, Children's Hospital, all these partnerships, I mean, we pretty much have ended all of the vacant, blighted housing on the entire South Side. And 20 years ago, nobody would have believed it. By 2015, we realized, oh my goodness, we're about ready to be our own worst enemy. I mean, we had gotten rid of so much of the blight, we're close to downtown, and so it's this area of gentrification. And so we spent a lot of time in 2015 with people from the hospital, United Way, and others saying, what are we going to do to make certain that everybody that lived in the neighborhood in 2015 could still be here 10 years later? And so that's when we decided that we should become landlords at scale. In other words, we decided we ought to be the ones to do what the market wouldn't do, to acquire property, to fix it up, and then rent it at affordable rates. And so in essence, we have self-imposed rent control on ourselves, and in the process, have this shot at a truly inclusive neighborhood. And so the snapshot on that, real briefly, is we work in about 7 or 8 different census tracts on the South Side. One of those is Census Tract 61. It's where the Reeve Center is, for those who don't know that part. Yeah, they're great.
Reeve Center.
Yeah. There are 1,200 places to live right now in Census Tract 61. And between Community Development for All People, Nationwide Children's Hospital, our other close allies, we own 300 of the 1,200 places to live in that census tract. In other words, we know for the next 20 years, that will be a community that is economically diverse, which gives us at least the possibility to then build a community that is truly inclusive and can be a front porch for all people.
We should be proud of that. All right, I've been told it's time for me to wrap up, but I have one last question. Una última pregunta.
Okay.
Because I understand that you, in your retirement, one of your goals is to learn to speak Spanish. So, my question to you is, ¿Cómo va eso? How's that going?
Muy bien. Not much. What I'm going to do is the classic politician thing. I'm going to change the question as if I didn't hear it. Before we turn over the mics, I want to just say one word about why I am so passionate about voter registration and getting people to vote. It really does matter to me, as I know it matters to you. But I want to suggest one nuance on that. We all understand that voting is the bedrock of our democracy. It matters that people get out and vote. We also know that this country has a very sad history of depriving people of the right to vote. And that puts, I think, even more of a burden on us to do everything we can to get people who have been marginalized, people of color, people of low income, the opportunity to register and vote. I believe that entirely. But I want to say one more thing, and it's the pastor side of me. I am so passionate about voting because I think it is the clearest place in secular society that shows an incredible sacred truth. You see, we were all made in God's image, and we are all equal. And if you think about it, where in our secular society is that truth most incarnate? It's in the voting booth, right? In the voting booth, we are all absolutely equal. We really are. Once we get there, we are all the same. You can be Les Wexner or the richest person, or you can be trying to make it on Social Security disability. But you get one ballot, you mark the people you want to elect to represent you, and you decide what issues you will support and which ones you will oppose. We are the same. You can be the most popular, well-known person in this city, or you might be anonymous to anybody but your closest circle of friends. But in the voting booth, we are exactly the same. And that is a sacred truth that I want us to claim every day. And when we vote, the whole world is seeing that truth. So we ought to promote that all the time. We are equal, especially when we vote. Okay. And now let's explain the
Yeah, right. I was going to say, come back next year, we can do some Spanish together, all right? Which I learned at Columbus South High School. Gracias. Felicidades a ti. This is a great honor, and I'm just thrilled to be sharing the stage with you right now. I really, really am. Ladies and gentlemen, Reverend John Edgar. And now I want to invite to the stage last year's Democracy in Action winner, Fran Ryan, to present Reverend Edgar with his award.
You know, John, I came from the north side and settled in the south side. When I first came to Columbus, I lived on Parsons Avenue, right close by. And I just want to thank you for helping us in Columbus, that everything is not just brick and mortar, but it's our people. Thank you.
It's such an honor.
Now I have another favorite person to add to my ever-growing list of favorite people. I don't think you can ever have too many of those. We want to thank Reverend Edgar, and we want to thank all of you very much for being here tonight. Thanks again to the sponsors, and we're going to give them a little bit more love. Crane Group, Honda, Nationwide Children's Hospital, the Robert Weiler Company, and the Worthington Companies Foundation. And you've heard a lot about voting tonight, and I think Reverend Edgar said it beautifully. I want you to understand the work of the League of Women Voters and support the work of the League of Women Voters. Now more than ever, as you've heard it said tonight, Central Ohio needs an unbiased voice like that of the League of Women Voters, just to make sure that voters, their right to vote, our democracy is defended. And the League does that on a number of levels. You've heard about a lot of them, but educating voters on new voting laws, coordinating voter education and registration drives, organizing local candidate forums, and my favorite part is teaching our babies about the importance of voting, teaching our babies about the importance of voting. So, And here comes the shameless commercial plug. We ask you to support this work with a tax-deductible donation by pulling out your phones, because that's what we do now, pulling out your phones and donating either through the website at lwvcols.org or by texting LWVMC to 44321. And there you'll get a prompt to donate right on your phone. If you didn't understand anything that I just said, because I'm just reading, I don't get it, I don't understand it, I don't do it. But I'm sure that in your house or in your neighborhood somewhere there's a 12-year-old who will do that for you. Also, easier, there are envelopes in tonight's program, and there are envelopes on the tables back there. For those of you in the back of the room, you can use that to make your donation. The League really does rely on donor support and has to help to keep the 104-year reputation. 104-year reputation? Are you sure it's been that long? Because I remember when y'all first started. But for 104 years, the League has been doing its incredible work to make sure that we have fair and honest elections and information about those elections. The League also relies on volunteer support of its members. You will find membership information on your table, so please consider joining the League of Women Voters and getting involved in their very important work. Together, we can ensure that our elections are free, that they are fair, and that they are accessible, that everybody can get to the polls to vote. Thank you again for joining us tonight to celebrate. We got to have another round of applause for Reverend John Edgar. And I thought I was finished with my shameless plugs, but I'm not. His book is back there. Go buy it. And a special surprise, if you have a star sticker on the back of your program, a star sticker, see, y'all just threw them down on the floor, didn't pay no attention. Well, mine's on the floor too, but didn't pay any attention. But if you have a star program, oh, you get to take home one of the center flower pieces on the table. So there, so somebody probably just got up and walked off with one. So if you're short one, sorry about that. But if you have that star, you get a center piece. Also, we want to remind all our past DIA recipients to please come to the front of the stage for a class picture. So don't leave before you get that done. And we hope that you've been inspired by tonight's program, by the conversation with Reverend Edgar there. And we hope to see you next year at the Democracy in Action Award. Maybe they'll ask me back, maybe they won't. On behalf of the League of Women Voters here in the city of Columbus, thank you and good night.